Welcome to MPT Podcast. This is Pastor Tim Wilbanks. We pray that this Word of God will bless your life and ministry and increase God's blessing upon you.
You can be seated today. Today we celebrate Father's Day around the world and more specifically here at MPT. We're going to have some fun this morning. We're also going to hear from three different speakers, Katy, Ellsworth, Jake, Kirk, and Joel Barnes, on the subject of fatherhood. Before I go any further, I'd like to wish all the fathers a happy Father's Day this morning. Father's Day is celebrated on the third Sunday in June, and this year it conveniently falls on the same exact day as the summer solstice. What does that mean? It's the longest day of the year. That gives you plenty of time, families, to enjoy celebrations, cookouts, whatever. You got the longest day of the year, so take advantage of it. Don't let it pass you by. Don't use the excuse, I didn't have time. In case you're wondering about the origin of Father's Day, Sonora Louise Smart died of Spokane, Washington, advocated for the holiday to honor her Civil War veteran father who raised 6 children as a single parent. While the first celebration took place on June 10th, 1910, it wasn't until 1972 that it was recognized as a permanent national celebration by presidential proclamation. Since Father's Day depends on a weekday rule rather than a fixed calendar day, the date shifts every year. It varies from year to year. While there are lots of ways that we can celebrate fathers today and our dads, the Bible gives us much wisdom about fatherhood. I'm reminded of one of my favorite passages of Scripture is the parable of the lost son, Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32, and the response of the father when his long-lost son came home. Also in in Psalms 103:13, this passage, it says this in this passage of Scripture, as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. I think both of these passages of Scripture show us the heart of God, amen, his forgiving spirit and how much he loves us. Billy Graham made this statement. He said, a good father is one of the most unsung, unpraised, unnoticed, and yet one of the most valuable assets in our society. And I agree with that 100%. This morning we're going to ask Katy Ellsworth to come, and she's going to give her thoughts on Father's Day. Let's give her a hand.
I just want to say it is an honor to get to speak today. Thank you, Brother Wilbanks, for this opportunity to tell on my dad, but mostly to honor all fathers, grandfathers, stepfathers, father-in-laws, and father figures. I got to enjoy my dad's company and his money Friday night. He took us all out to eat, and we swapped stories, and they gave me ideas of what I should tell and inside jokes about if we all roll over. And you're not supposed to get that, but I know they do. So we had a good time, and we laughed. And I think that if your father's here today, you should go and hug him and tell him that you love him and be grateful. I really don't know what I would do without my dad or where I would be. And I would also like to give honor to my husband, who is a great father to Bo. I'm very proud of the man that he's become. We've been talking about this speech all week and stressed over it and prayed over it, and I've asked him so many questions, and I'm happy to say that I have a new perspective and appreciation for fathers. The first verse I'm going to use is Proverbs 22:6. It says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I think that fathers are truly important to a child's life and character. I can only speak for myself, but my father's presence in my life was more important to me than anything he could have given me. He was always there when I needed him and still around even whenever I didn't need him as much. When I let him down, he never turned his back on me. He corrected me whenever I was wrong, and he always tried his best to redirect me whenever I was headed down a wrong path. He let me fall and learn, and he was always there whenever I was ready to get back up. And I remember that more than any mistake that he might have made or any fights that we had. A father's example builds character and installs value to his children. And my dad has taught me many life lessons, but probably not in the way that he thought. the most important lesson my dad taught me was that church and a relationship with God is the most important thing in your life. You did not miss church in our house unless you were sick, you were hurt, or you were working. And he made it very clear to me and my brothers that church needs to be first in your life, and it was going to be as long as you lived in his house. The next thing my dad taught me was patience. And oddly enough, it was through going fishing. But if you would have heard me yesterday fishing with Logan, you would not think that I've learned patience through fishing. Though I got so aggravated, I would bait the hook and bait the hook and bait the hook, and they would just take it. And I finally caught 2 tiny little fish, and I was so done with it after that. But I had fun. And personally, I don't think it should be called fishing. I think it should be called feeding greedy fish. But that's just my opinion. I really hated it whenever Dad took us fishing for a while, because it was just sitting and waiting and him saying, "No talking, you're going to scare the fish." And if it wasn't that, it was him telling some story that we've heard a million times. And so I didn't love it, and it was boring. And it was even worse if fish weren't even involved. So, but anyways, we would go fishing, and it would take all morning just to pack everything up. But when we got there, he would help me set up my reel, and I would throw my first cast and nothing, so I'd do it again and still nothing. And I would get so aggravated, so I would throw it harder, and then it would end up in a tree, or it would end up stuck between some rocks. And all I hear is Dad saying, "Katy, you got to be patient. Just leave it out there a little bit. Give it some time, or, if it's stuck, pull on the line a little. It'll come down." But my favorite thing to finally hear from him was, "Katy, you got one on the line. You better start reeling." But don't get me started on trying to set up my own line. Whenever I got old enough and I was trying to do that hook, I remember one time I FaceTimed my dad because I was by myself. And I said, "Dad, I cannot get this stupid line through this hook, and I don't know what to do." He's like, "Well, just take some time. You'll get it." Thank you, Dad. That's exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. But with that being said, I would never love to fish as much as I do now if it wasn't for my dad teaching me to slow down and to be patient with it. And some of you may be shocked by this one, but my dad taught me the importance of hard work. Oh, God. So, if you've ever rode with a truck driver, you know what I'm talking about whenever I say truck driving is real work. But that's not how he taught me the importance of hard work. We weren't ever just rich, but my parents made sure that we had what we needed. And as I got older, my dad wouldn't just give me whatever I asked for, mostly because we couldn't afford what I asked for, because, I'm a girl and I'm a little bit more expensive. But when I got to be around 15 or 16, I wanted to go out more, and I didn't want to be at the house so much, so I got a job, which I hated. And the only going out I did was going to work. But the first little simple act of getting my own money and learning to manage what I had was teaching me responsibility. My parents not handing me everything was the greatest gift that they could have ever given me. Another way that he taught me about hard work was that dang wood heater that they have in their living room. If you want to talk about work, that thing is work. Caleb knows. They were better at cutting the wood than I was, but I made sure to carry my weight in wood because there was no way I was going to let them outdo me in anything, especially wood. My parents also taught me how to love. You can ask Logan that the way we love can be frustrating, but my dad was gone a lot whenever I was a kid because he was always on the road, but when he would come home, it was like a load had lifted off my mom. And when he came home, you could see the excitements in her face, and she would always have a meal ready for him, and the door was open with a warm welcome. He would give her a big kiss, and we would groan, "Ugh, y'all are nasty," and Dad would just make it so much worse. But normally that weekend, he was home. You could just tell my mom was relieved. And as we got older, he found more jobs that he could be home more with his back surgeries. There were times that he would be home for longer, which you would think were peace, but if you know my dad, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. My mom and dad would get annoyed with each other when they were around each other too much. And, like before you think anything crazy, it was just normal, husband and wife bickering. It wasn't nothing serious. So the older I got, the more I realized it's harmless and it's just being around each other too much. So instead of leaving the room, I learned to join into it and get them one against another. So I'd start with dad, and then I'd switch over to mom, then I'd start with dad, and then by the end of it, everybody was laughing and having a good time. But my husband has learned that, that it's back and forth, and that's one of my big love languages, Lord bless him. So I wanted to get a first-hand account of a father experience, and I thought, who better than a new dad? So, of course, I go to Logan, and I asked him what the biggest thing that had changed since he had become a father. And it was actually what he had thought about daily, his responsibilities. It's not like a mom's thoughts, which are laundry and making sure everybody's fed, the house is clean, doctor's appointments, making sure everybody gets ready on time. That list goes on and on. But a father's list looks a little different. It's making sure that the wife is happy. If she's not happy, that home's going to fall apart. Are we going to have enough to pay the bills this month? The grass needs to be mowed. I need to work on the house. The truck needs worked on. Katy's car needs a new tail light. The vehicles need oil changed, and the list goes on and on. But fathers carry a weight just like mothers. It just looks a little different. And I'm beyond blessed to have a man who cares and loves for his family enough to carry that responsibility. I don't know anything about the joys of being a father, but I do remember when he cried when our son was born and the first time that he held him. He was holding him and he started to cry and handing him back to me so that he wouldn't get any tears on him. And he was so nervous when we came home that any time Bo cried, he would jump up like he had been struck by lightning. And I remember the first time Bo had laughed, and it was one little thing. It was like something about a Cookie Monster. And if you could have seen Logan's face, it was like pure joy. Like you can't even explain it. But after that, he didn't laugh for weeks. We got one, and that was it for weeks. So I lost my spot. Here we go. He stayed up with him on late nights and changed dirty diapers, and his eyes filled up then too, but it wasn't from joy. Any man can become a father, but a real man sticks around to be a dad. Dads, your boys will grow up to be another version of you, and your girls will watch to see how she needs to be loved and cared for. No man or woman is perfect, and we all make mistakes as parents. That's just because we're human. What matters is that we keep showing up to be better for our kids. Real love is dedication and commitment. God made man and woman to be different because together we are balance that children need. And I can't give a speech about fathers and not mention my grandfather, James Thornton. He's the closest to godliness man I know. He is 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. And I'm not saying that he's perfect, but I know no man closer. And that's where my mom gets her character from, the influence of her father. And I once heard a man say, a grandfather is the closest thing to the finished product of what a man should be. And while that case is different for everybody, I can relate to that. All of these little examples are just a few ways I've learned from my dad, and I would be here forever if I was to tell you them all. And I had some other stories that aren't so much about lessons, but they're just fun to hear. And since I timed my speech last night, I think I have time for one. One day, me and my dad were sitting in the living room, and he was kind of grumpy, and he was a little agitated. And so I go over there, and I start poking on him and pulling on him, and he said, "Quit, Katy, my stomach hurts." So I say, "Okay, well, your toe ain't hurting." So I get on there, and I start pulling on his toe. And something popped, but it was not his toe. So if you want to hear that whole story, you'll have to go to him for that one. I'm so grateful for all the fathers in my life. Thank you to every father who has sacrificed for your family. Thank you for carrying the weight so that we don't have to. And I hope you realize all that you do does not go unnoticed. I hope that you get extra loved on and appreciated today. Happy Father's Day.
Science tells us that laughter, a smile, is good medicine. Turn around and smile at somebody. On that note, I get the privilege of sharing some dad jokes. I mean, after all, we're celebrating all things Dad, right? So y'all just bear with me for a moment. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. What has more lives than a cat? A frog. It croaks every day. What is Forrest Gump's password to his computer? One Forrest, one. What does corn say when it's paid a compliment? Oh, shucks. What do you call a pig that practices karate? A pork chop. This time, Jake Kirk's going to come and give us his thoughts on Father's Day.
Bear with me here as I try to get my thoughts back together after all that. But before I begin, I'd like to thank Brother Will Banks for giving me the opportunity to come up here and speak on such a great day today, and also great job by Katy on her speech. And when I was sitting down thinking about what I would talk about here today about fathers and about my dad and my family, I was thinking about all the great memories that we've spent together and had times that we've been able to spend together. And I ended up thinking about the first time I killed my first buck and us going hunting. Then as I was thinking about that, I went on over thinking about some other times we were hunting. And then I remember one day in specific, it was one early morning, we were sitting in the stand, and in the opposite direction, there came a monster buck of a lifetime. I ain't never seen one that big. I don't think my dad had either. But he ended up turning around seeing it, so he motioned me to turn around, take a look at it. And I think all hunters know, as soon as you see a buck like that, buck fever, it's on you like, I don't know, on you like lightning. But but as soon as he saw it, and as soon as he turned me around, he motioned me right away, Jake, get your gun up, get your gun out the window. And the Lord only knows why, I, for some reason, had his gun in my hand, and he had my gun in his hand. There we go. And we talk about it to this day. I don't know how in the world that happened, but it happened. And me being, I was still just a little punk, and I was too scared to shoot his gun. And I told him, I was like, man, I can't do it. And so he went ahead, picked up my little 30-30 rifle, stuck it out the window, and took a shot at it, and missed it by a good bit. But so we went home, and we set up an old gallon milk jug, empty milk jug out in the backyard, and he took a few shots at it, and again, missed it by a pretty good margin. But we ended up figuring out that the scope was about 7 inches off, and we didn't set the scope before we went hunting that day. Now, whether or not that was a convenient excuse for his poor shot beats me, but I believe him, and I trust him. But as I thought about that memory, I realized something. That wasn't the only time my dad had sacrificed something for me. It was just one of the clearest examples I could see. The truth is, sacrifice is rarely found in one big moment. More often, it's found in 1,000 little moments that nobody else notices. It's choosing someone else's needs before your own. It's giving up opportunities so someone else can have them. It's investing your time, energy, and life into another person. And when I began thinking about sacrifice, my thoughts eventually led me to Jesus. When most of us think about Christ's sacrifice, we immediately think about the cross. We think about the nails driven into his hands and his feet. We think about the crown of thorns. And we think about the beating he endured and the blood he shed for our salvation. And rightly so, because the cross was the greatest act of love and sacrifice the world has ever known. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Jesus' sacrifice didn't begin at Calvary. His entire life was a sacrifice. Before there was a cross on a hill, there was a king who left heaven. The creator of the universe stepped in his own creation. The God who spoke stars into existence chose to be born in a stable. The one who owned everything became poor so that we could become rich in him. He sacrificed the glory of heaven to walk among broken humanity. He sacrificed comfort, recognition, and sacrificed ease. The Bible tells us that he had no place to lay his head. While others slept in their homes, Jesus often spent his nights praying. While others pursued their own interests, he spent his days serving people. He healed the sick, opened blind eyes, cleansed lepers, and fed hungry crowds. He comforted the brokenhearted, yet many of the very people he came to save rejected him. He was mocked by those he loved, doubted by those closest to him, and betrayed by one of his own disciples. Falsely accused, misunderstood, and still he loved. Every step he took was a sacrifice. In the Garden of Gethsemane, knowing exactly what awaited him, Jesus prayed, "Not my will, but thy will be done." Even his own flesh took a step back from the thought of suffering that was coming. Yet he willingly submitted himself to the plan for our salvation because his love for us was greater than his desire to avoid the pain. Then came the cross. The nails didn't keep him there. Love kept him there. He could have called 12 legions of angels. He could have walked away. He could have chosen himself. And instead, he chose forgiveness over revenge. He chose mercy over judgment. And he chose us over himself. And because he did, every one of us has the opportunity to be saved. When I think about Jesus, I see the perfect example of sacrificial love. A love that gives, a love that serves, and a love that puts others first. And while no earthly father could ever compare to the perfect sacrifice of Jesus Christ, I've been blessed to have a dad who has spent his life trying to live out those same principles. And when I think about my dad pointing me toward that buck instead of taking the shot himself, I see a small reflection of a much greater truth. I see a man who has consistently chosen to put his family before himself. A man who has sacrificed opportunities, time, energy, and comfort so that people he loves would have something better. A dad is your right-hand man who is always there to help. He's a shoulder to cry on during rough times, a hand to reach out for when you need help getting back on your feet, and a person to turn to when you're in need of advice. A dad is a man of integrity even while he's trying to carry the weight of the world. A man of discipline even when times seem to be at their worst. And a man of righteousness when the rest of the world says it's acceptable to be otherwise. There are so many more great attributes of a dad than just these. A father is a protector when danger comes. A provider when needs must be met. A teacher when lessons need to be learned. A leader when the path seems uncertain. A source of strength when everyone else feels weak. Many times, the greatest things a father does are things that nobody else sees. The prayers he prays when no one is listening. The worries he carries when no one knows. The sacrifices he makes without ever expecting recognition. The burdens he bears so that his family doesn't have to. The older I've gotten, the more I've realized the same of the greatest blessings in my life didn't come from things that my dad gave me. They came from the example he set before me. And before I wrap this up, I'd like to take a moment to honor and thank all the great men and fathers of this church who have been father figures to so many of us. Thank you for your dedication, your faithfulness, and your sacrifice, not only for your families, but for this church as well. I promise you that your efforts do not go unnoticed. Whether it is through your prayers, your examples, your service, or your willingness to invest in the next generation, you have helped shape lives more than you may ever realize. We are blessed because of your faithfulness, and we thank you for it. And now to finish things up, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you to my dad. Thank you for everything. Thank you for always being there. Thank you for making it to my ball games. Thank you for taking time to teach me how to hunt and fish. Thank you for throwing baseball and shooting basketball with me. Thank you for riding trails and back roads on four-wheelers with me and creating memories that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Thank you for teaching me how to be faithful to God and committed to His church. Thank you for showing me what it means to be a servant. Thank you for teaching me how to use tools, operate equipment, solve problems, work hard, and take care of the things that God has entrusted to me. Most importantly, thank you for preparing me for life the best way that you knew how. Thank you for showing me what it means to be a man of faith, a man of integrity, and a man who puts his family first. You've been my teacher, my example, my encourager, and my hero. You weren't a perfect man, because none of us are, but you have been the perfect dad for me. I pray that God helps me become even half the man you are. And I'm beyond grateful and honored to be your son. I love you, Daddy. Happy Father's Day.
This time, Joel Barnes, our third and final speaker, is coming. How many's enjoying this thus far?
Well, Katy stole my verse right off the bat. And I'm not sure if I should be thanking Brother Wilbanks or cursing him for putting me up here, but we'll try to be Christian. As Katy's already mentioned, I looked at Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I've been blessed to have an excellent example of a father and fathers in my life. And I'd like to share just a few thoughts on some of those men. First of all, I love my overalls. Just like my great-grandpa, Papa Cooper. And I remember him, how important family was to Papa Cooper. And it remains that way today because the first Saturday in every August we have the Cooper family reunion. And there's usually between 50 and 60 of us that still get together from that family and just celebrate being a family. And another thing he loved was wrestling. Yeah. And, when I was younger, I didn't realize just how orchestrated that particular sport is. But you couldn't tell him that. It was the real deal. Every Saturday morning, around 12, I think, he was going to watch wrestling out of Memphis. But another thing he loved, and probably most importantly, was God. And I remember when we were going to church at Souls Harbor, Papa Cooper would sit on the second or third row on the left side, I believe, and he would testify every so often. And when he got up, he would look a lot like I do right now. Dark blue overalls and a button-down shirt. And he would start thanking God for everything he had done for him and his family. And by the time he got done thanking God, he had moved from that second or third row seat all the way up to the altar. Sometimes you thought he was going to take the mic and keep going. And he could have. He was someone who had a firm foundation in his faith. And that showed through his children. Now, Papa Barnes may not have been around church a whole lot, but he did teach me what a strong work ethic was. Yes, sir. He was constantly at work, and if he wasn't at work, then he was out in the shop behind the house, and if he wasn't there, he was in the garden. And I can remember some feedback, apparently. I can remember him driving an old station wagon to work. And it wasn't just him, it was a whole crew of guys that rode with him and making that trip back and forth to Memphis every day. And, he would come home, as I said, in the afternoons and straight to the shop until time for dinner. And as I got older and graduated from the children's table to the adult table, that showed me the importance of family and spending time with your family. Because whenever we were sitting around that table, we were sharing funny stories, how our day went, and just having good conversation about sometimes the most trivial and mundane things. But it's that builds up a family. Now, Papa Rixey was another story. And I think quite a few of you remember him. I remember vaguely him getting up early on Sunday mornings, and he went somewhere, but I never knew where until I was older. And when I got older, I learned he was always going to the church, usually around 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, heat or AC coming on, making sure the doors were unlocked, and taking time to pray before anybody else showed up. And many mornings when I was older and working with him, I'd drive to meet him at his house before we left for a job, and he would be sitting in his chair in the hallway reading his Bible, drinking his coffee. And Sunday afternoons were always, again, a time of family because quite a few of our Sunday afternoons were spent at his house. waiting on Mama to finish fixing her dinner that would be ready at 1 o'clock, which meant maybe 2 or 2:15. But Lord, the woman fixed enough on one meal to feed an army. And there wasn't an army of us there, although we could eat like one, especially me. And Sunday afternoons, while waiting on that dinner to get done, when we were younger, he would read us the comics. As he got older, we would start laughing back and forth about this comic or that comic. And I think one of his favorite in the Sunday papers was Old Crankshaft. Ornery old bus driver who liked to see how many mailboxes he could knock down every school year. And in the summer, always had the fire department on standby when he got ready to light the grill. That always gave Papa a joke, or a laugh rather, when that particular comic came out on that Sunday. He also kept a garden for many years. And, even though he would work all day long, he'd come home and tend that garden. And I remember helping my grandmother shuck corn, shell peas. She would put a lot of it away. But a lot of years, he gave away more than he kept. And sometimes to those who just needed some food. A lot of times to others that were older and couldn't garden like they used to, but they still could can stuff. So he was always out working in his garden or driving the roads looking for his other thing, another job, pouring concrete. And that, if you've never done it, is hard labor, hard manual labor. And I absolutely loved getting to do that with him. He taught me so much. I learned how to do things right the first time around. Because if you do it right the first time, you don't have to do it again. And it makes life easier, not only on you, but on those you're working with. He also helped me to understand that, especially as I got older and moved into my college years, education doesn't make you better than anyone else. And that's something that still will drive me crazy today. We're all God's children. None of us is better than anyone else. And we should always be willing to help out our fellow man. A lot of times with those working with him pouring concrete, we would get done after a hard day. We'd always hit it early, hopefully try to be done by 2 or 2:30 before it got extremely too hot. And on the road home, we'd stop and get a drink or something, and we would drive the back roads home, and he was always sharing stories about his life, things he had seen, things he remembered, people he remembered. And at the time, whenever he would repeat those, I would think to myself, well, he's already said that. Why is he telling me again? Has he already forgotten? As I got older, I realized, he probably knew exactly what he was doing. Because the best lessons usually take more than once to learn. And sometimes if we listen, that's a little bit easier than learning a lesson the hard way. And his work ethic, in my mind, was absolutely second to none. He would work all day pouring concrete, work in the afternoons in his garden, and still be at church. And as he got older and was not able to work as much, then eventually any at all, I know while he was coming to church here, I've heard from some of the young ministers and younger men that he was constantly giving them words of wisdom and encouragement. So he progressed in his life, constantly staying in the Word and praying, and was able to share that with the younger generation. Now, the most important man that's taught me about fatherhood is, of course, my own father. He raised me right. I remember many times when he was sick, and I do mean sick, and he was still at work. I remember him working sometimes 100 hours plus in a week. he may not make it at 7:30 on Wednesday night, but he'd be here by 8 o'clock, take his hat off, run a comb through his hair, and come in and be here for preaching. Rarely he had to work on weekends, but when he did, on Sundays rather, he worked quite a few Saturdays, but when he did have to work on Sundays, he made sure he was going to be at least present in one of the services. Even if that meant the same thing, coming into those dirty clothes from the mill, running a comb through the hair, but he was going to be here. And it's that kind of work ethic that I think, unfortunately, some of our younger generation is missing. And speaking with people who've worked at various jobs, the jobs are available. The workers are few. Just like when it comes to the field of harvest in the church, there's plenty to harvest. More of us, myself included, need to be working more at it. And no matter how tired my dad was, he always had time for us kids. Now, I can remember one of my favorite pictures, and I wish I could find a copy of it. It was a picture of him leaning back in his recliner. He had Amanda laying on his chest, and both of them snoring. He always took time to take us fishing. I never was much of a hunter, but he did take me squirrel hunting once. Always had time to play with the kids. And that was something that I will remember forever. And it's those small things, dads, that you may not think make much of an impact, but that's what sticks with your kid forever. And now that we're both a little bit older, and he's reached his retirement years, and I reached mine because somebody decided to do something they shouldn't do while driving an 18-wheeler, I still call him. I actually think we're probably closer than we ever have been. I call him pretty much every morning, usually around 7 or 7:30, and we talk for an hour or so. And it doesn't mean we're saying something to each other the entire time. Sometimes we're just sitting there listening to the birds through each other's phones. But it's that time spent with your father. Sharing small stories. What have you got to do today? What's going on here? How did this work out? It's being there. And it makes a big difference. Not only did he always have time for me, just like Papa Rixie, he taught me a very solid work ethic. Always being at church. He trained me and raised me in the way I need to go, but it's my decision whether or not I go that way now. And sometimes, dads, you just got to let them go. And that's the hardest thing to do. And I'm learning that the older I get. Now I'm a dad. And that was scary when I first became a dad, and it's still scary today. Because that's a lot of responsibility that you carry until the good Lord calls you home. And I will say being a father changed me. Because when I became a father, I was not in church. I obviously raised in church, but had stepped away. But I remember Lindsay and I coming to church with Colin and Dallas. Dallas was a newborn. And during a worship service, I don't even remember the exact day, but I remember looking down at her and thinking, it's not about me anymore. It's about her and eventually all my children. So I have to be an example for them. What I say and what I do directly affects them. And yes, I want to get into heaven, but if there's anything more that I want to get into heaven myself, it's to get my kids there. So it was because of Dallas and looking down at her and seeing her as she was sleeping that particular service that I realized, hey, it's time to get right with God. And just like everybody, I've had my ups and downs since then, but I still try to be a good dad, to spend time with them, to teach them what's right and what's wrong. And I promise, Winter, we'll go shooting as soon as we can. Dads, remember, there's always somebody watching. From the small things to the big things, they're watching. And they may not even be your kids. But people are, those little ones are going to look up to fathers. So be godly in all that you do, and it will pay off in the future. Happy Father's Day.
We pray today that this word has blessed you, ministered to the needs of your life. Until next time, God bless you.